Thank you for joining us today to learn more about accessible data tables in the Presence website. To learn more about other aspects of your website, be sure to visit Resource Central. This module should be viewed after the author is already familiar with the majority of the editing capabilities of the CMS and inline editor. If you are not familiar with content editing, please view the appropriate modules on Resource Central. We will begin by looking at a problematic and inaccessible data table. I will then show you how to reproduce the page properly, and will follow with another example that more completely illustrates the accessibility functions of a data table. Data tables are an important tool for organizing data in web content. They can, however, be daunting when considering the requirements necessary to make them accessible to screen readers and other assistive technology. This video will cover inserting a data table in a content space page and ensuring it is marked up properly to be accessible. There are regulations for the purpose, arrangement, and content of a data table in order for it to comply with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.0. Keep in mind that data tables should be kept to a minimum and as simple as possible to accurately display information and relay that information to assistive technologies in an understandable way. Screen readers will be able to access the information as long as we utilize the accessibility features. Small data tables will respond well to small devices, but data table responsiveness is slightly limited by the nature of the grid array. Users on those small devices will have a harder time if there are too many columns or if the data in the cells is too wide. First, the purpose. Data tables should only be used to reference actual data in a grid-style format. Data tables must be marked up properly in the HTML by filling out the Accessibility tab in the Table Properties menu. This allows screen readers to associate data in the cells with the proper label or header cells. Data tables must have at least one header row or header column. Without a header row or column, the screen reader will not relate cell data properly. Data tables should not be used for layout purposes or to arrange content on a page. Data tables should be simple with no combined or merged cells. While it's possible to make complex data tables accessible, it requires much more manipulation of the HTML, including creating ID elements for every header cell and individually labeling every single cell with all IDs of their headers. That is not something we will cover in this video. It is important to note that data tables influence the reading order and navigation order of information on the screen. Therefore, data tables should not be used for layout. The reading order for cells could be different, especially for complex data tables, and possibly confusing to someone listening to a screen reader. Data tables with merged cells are especially damaging to the logical reading order of a page, and therefore, complex data tables should be split into different simple data tables, or should be written out in a list fashion in order to be understood by a screen reader user. An example of an inaccessible data table is this table used for layout. Only part of this data table, the schedule, is actual data. The rest of the table is being used strictly for layout. The first problem is the merged cells for headers. The cells are also not marked as headers in the HTML, so the screen reader does not associate these rows with the data in the columns. The second problem is that the screen reader will read this from left to right and top to bottom. Watch as I use the keyboard commands to arrow through this table using the screen reader Vox for the Chrome browser.
Data table bad example. Training 3 / for students / data table bad example table quote unquote day schedule. Meet the team. Time. Activity. Studying.png. Teacher pound 1, teacher pound 2, teacher pound 3, teacher pound 4, teacher pound 5, 8:45 to 10:15. Block 1. 10:20 to 11:50. Block 3. 11:55 to 12:55. Lunch. 1 o'clock to 2:30. Block 5. 2:35 to 4 o'clock. Block 7. The quote-unquote day schedule is every Monday and Wednesday except for weeks with holidays. Weeks that include holidays for half days will revert to quote see quote days that include all periods.
Notice how the screen reader read the cells a day schedule, meet the team, then time and activity, but then it reads the next cell that has the graphic and the text at the bottom of the cell before coming back to the 8:45 to 10:15 and block 1. This would be confusing to a screen reader user as the reading order does not allow for the time label to be associated with the times or activity to be associated with the periods. Now let's recreate the same page using a real data table for the schedule and page layout to divide the page into 2 columns and insert the graphic on the right side of the page. First, I will navigate to a content space page where I want my data table. I will enter my editor by turning on design mode and either clicking on the pen icon at the top right of the portlet or the blue pencil icon that appears as I hover over the portlet. To insert a data table, I will place my cursor within the editor and use the Insert Table button to insert a 2-column data table with 6 rows. I will then type in the data for each of the cells as necessary. Now that my data table has its content, I have to set up the accessibility features to allow it to communicate properly with the screen reader. To do this, I will right-click on the data table and go to Table Properties. The Accessibility tab is located on the far right of the tabs at the top of the dialog. First, I mark the number of header rows and header columns. For this example, I only have one header row. It contains time and activity. The caption of the data table will be the visible title and should tell what type of data will be displayed in the data table and its relationship. For this example, I would caption the data table, A day block schedule with times and periods listed. The caption align will determine where the title is shown in relation to the data table. The summary is not visible, but should be treated like the long description of an image. If there are trends in the data that can be easily spotted by someone with vision, the summary should discuss those trends. For a short, simple data table, describe trends here. For a table containing complicated data trends, the best practice would be to place a longer description on the same page as the data table and make it visible to sighted users as well. Or create a new page with the longer description and place a link to that page in close proximity to the data table. This can help individuals with cognitive and/or mathematical processing disabilities. Since this is a very simple table that does not show a trend in data points, the summary would be redundant information, so I will not use that feature for this particular data table. I definitely want to check the box that says Associate Cells with Headers. This allows the screen reader user to have the header labels read to them with each cell. So the cell that has the time for block 1 would say 8:45 to 10:15 time, instead of just saying 8:45 to 10:15. Clicking on OK will save the settings. Now, I would rather my data table take up a little more space on the page, so I will grab one of the white handles at the lower right corner and drag the data table to the intended width and height. Then I publish the page. To recreate the right half of the original table, I would first use Page Options, Page Layout, click the radio button next to the 2-column layout, and then close the dialog. I would then refresh the page and turn on design mode. I would scroll down until I can see the two active area dashed outlines and drag a content portlet into that area. From there, I would use the standard content editing techniques to place my image, text, and hyperlinks. For more information on those techniques, please see the corresponding videos on Resource Central. Now let's look at a more traditional data table that uses both header rows and header columns to designate labels for data and more thoroughly utilizes the accessibility features. This data table shows the number of students served by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Notice the bolded header row and header column. Now I will right-click on the data table and go to Table Properties. I will click on the Accessibility tab as I did for the previous data table. For this data table, I have marked one header row and one header column. The caption needs to include the topic of the table and any measurement units that may exist. Sometimes it will be an X versus Y situation, but this particular caption reads, "Number of children 3 to 21 years old served under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act by type of disability, years 2010 through 2011 to 2014 through 2015, measured in thousands." The caption align allows the caption to be left justified, centered, or right justified, and allows you to place the caption above or below the data table. The summary will not be visible to sighted users, but can be read by a screen reader dependent upon the user's preference. We could use this space to describe any trends that are readily perceivable to the sighted user and information that can increase the understanding of a non-sighted user. The amount of detail included within the summary should take into consideration the nature of the information and its intended target audience. This summary reads, "The data table shows the highest number of students are those with specific learning disabilities, with numbers from 2,361,000 but slowly decreasing to 2,278,000 over the 5-year period. The second largest group is students with speech or language impairments, beginning with 1,396,000, decreasing to 1,332,000. The caption continues to cite the groups from largest to smallest, including the data points, and discusses whether the group became larger or smaller throughout the years measured. For this data table, I could have reasonably skipped the summary box and placed the longer description of the data table on the page with the actual data table. The decision whether to place the long description in the summary or directly on the page should take into consideration the main point and target audience. If noticing the data trends are essential to the meaning of your data table, place the long description within the page. If the data trends are incidental and meaning can be derived from the data in the table itself, you may choose to use the summary box. Be sure to check the box that says Associate cells with headers. I hope I have assisted in your understanding of accessible data tables. On behalf of West School Messenger, we thank you for your efforts to create inclusive web content. To learn more about other aspects of your site, please visit Resource Central. Thanks for watching and have a great day.